We can hear you.
Okay, thanks. All right, so should I begin?
Yes, please.
Okay, thanks. All right, hi everyone, and hi from Taiwan. It's 10 something at night right now. My name is Teoh, and I'm an associate professor at the psychology department at National Taiwan University. I'm also a registered intermediary. We have an intermediary system in Taiwan, so I go to court with children. I help prosecutors interview children about child sexual abuse, allegations of child sexual abuse and physical abuse. And I also provide training to judges, prosecutors, police officers, and child protection workers. So I'm sorry I can't be there because I've actually been giving training to prosecutors these 2 days. And it's actually highly related to the work I'm going to talk to you about later. But importantly, I need to mention my co-authors, my students, Chen and Chiang, who are there in person, thankfully. So please wave to everyone, show yourselves, say hi. And they've been helping with this study that we did. But I'm going to talk about 2 issues in this talk, accusations and allegations, and they actually come from 2 different areas of work. I'm going to begin my talk with my work on allegations in the criminal justice system and how these allegations are related to family court judges' concerns. But first, I'd like to talk to you about the 4 characters you see on the first slide. It means you speak or you talk and I listen. And it's something that we've been really trying to promote in Taiwan. Not that we haven't done it, but we don't do enough of it in the justice system, be it the criminal courts or the family courts. And also we don't have enough research in this area that uses this approach where we really get children and fathers to talk about their experiences. So I'm going to talk first about allegations, so more in the criminal justice system. And my first encounter was in around 2017, when a criminal court judge approached me about her concerns about a mother's role in a child sexual abuse investigation. It was because she had just heard my talk about getting judges to be aware of custody disputes when a CSA allegation is made, and to be aware of custody disputes and to consider the impact that they might have on the investigation in the criminal justice process. And she got concerned because she said, well, I saw the police interview and it looked like the mother was heavily involved in the questioning of the child. And so she asked if I could provide an expert witness opinion on the quality of the police interview. And that's actually really my specialty. I specialize in analyzing and training investigative interviews. And so indeed, my conclusion was that the police interview was heavily based and heavily involved the mother's account to the point that the mother was speaking for the child, was questioning for the police officer, literally telling the police officer, that's a bad question. I'm just going to ask that question for you. And at the time in 2017, actually, there were many judges who held the belief that children cannot make up stories about child abuse, and especially child sexual abuse, because it's something so unfamiliar to children. Because physical abuse, I wouldn't say it's more familiar to Taiwanese children, but Taiwanese children have been given corporal punishment before, in earlier days. But judges seem to think that, well, sexual assault is something very complicated and something very foreign to children. And so it must be true when children make such allegations. And also we see that police and prosecutor interviews and psychiatric assessments tend to be based on the mother's accounts. meaning you literally see statements in these assessments and interviews saying that, well, the mother told us this, and this, and then they make conclusions based on that. Now, it doesn't mean that credibility is, oh, hold on, sorry. You can't see my slides because it says I'm screen sharing. How about those online? Can you see my slides?
No, we have a few messages from some people who cannot see them at the moment.
Okay. So everyone or just some people? Why
Only
don't I?
us host can see it, but the rest of us watching online cannot see them.
Okay, let me try it again. Yeah, it does say, I think you have to, I think I can't do anything about it because it says only the host and co-host can see my screen share. Maybe you need to change my status as, oh, did we resolve it? Hold on,
If
let
you
me
don't mind
try.
trying one more
Yeah,
time.
yeah, sure. How about now?
It should be good now.
Yeah?
Yeah, we can see it.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly show you this slide. That was the first slide. Oh, the title slide, of course. All right. And so the third point is that credibility might be questioned by criminal court judges when they suspect influence of third parties, like a mother, and when a custody dispute is raised. So we do provide professional opinions about possible third-party influence. And in Taiwan, sometimes we see a lot of third-party influence from grandparents as well. It's very common in Taiwan for grandparents to live with families, with their grandchildren. And when we do analyses of these third-party involvement in the investigative process, we get access to social worker assessments. They are the frontline responders in CSA cases in Taiwan. And then, of course, the forensic interviews. Now, I have come across cases where the records are not intact, meaning, you know, I asked to see the video of the police interview where the mother might have been heavily involved in the process. And sometimes police gets back to the courts and say, well, we only have the summary of the police interview. We've lost the video or something like that. It's happening less and less now, but it's still quite shocking that it has happened in the last 3 to 5 years. Now, the CSA allegation is not only a concern for the criminal courts, it's also a dilemma for the family courts in Taiwan as well. I often give lectures to family court judges as well, and they tell me that they struggle with custody decisions when a CSA allegation is made against the father. The reason being that they can't wait for the criminal courts to complete, they can't wait for the prosecutor's office to complete the investigation, to file charges and for the trial to end, and actually wait for the judges to deliver a verdict. Because CSA investigations and the trial in Taiwan do take a pretty long time, 2 to 5 years, sometimes up to 8 to 10 years. And so family court judges can't wait, they can't work with this timeline. And so they usually just grant custody to the mother, even though considering the best interest of the child, they would have granted it to the father if an allegation of child sexual abuse had not been made against him. Now, as I mentioned earlier, criminal courts do lack awareness about the custody context, and even if they are aware of it, they're not sensitive to it. They're not sensitive to the possible impact of a custody dispute on a CSA case or a child abuse case. Another concern for us is that mothers are often the accompanying adult during the investigation and trial process, even if a custody dispute is going on in this family. We've actually raised this with prosecutors. Like, for example, these 2 days when I've been training prosecutors, I do remind them to pay attention to this kind of information, when you are aware of a custody dispute, please ensure that, and if the mother is the one who made the report, please ensure that the mothers are not present at the forensic interview. And if possible, do hire intermediaries like myself. We have many intermediaries in Taiwan who are able to help with the interview and the cross-examination, and to prevent any undue influence by a parent when there's a custody dispute. So because of my work in the justice system, I was approached last year by an organization called the Flamingo Fathers. I'm actually not quite sure why they call themselves that, but they wanted me to join a panel to talk about paternal alienation and to talk about accusations and allegations against fathers. And coincidentally, around this time, Sue, thank you, Sue, contacted me about the wonderful conference that we're having right now. And this kind of gave me a really good push to develop a study specifically to look at father abuse. And in the context of father abuse, we wanted to look further into things like accusations and allegations against fathers. The accusations that I'm going to talk about may sound trivial to some people or minor to some people, but in the Taiwanese culture context, these accusations can be considered immoral. You know, to be a bad parent, to be a bad son, that's almost immoral in the context of this culture. I had actually already begun a study years ago on the childhood witnessing of family abuse among Taiwanese college students. But this study we focus our recruitment on people who are willing to share their experiences of witnessing father abuse. Now, initially, we recruited students between the ages of 21 and 24, but we were really surprised that people started writing to us to tell us that, you know, they don't fit the age requirement, but they would really like to talk about their experiences. They're interested in joining our study. And so we submitted a revised IRB application to include all the adults. And in our interviews, we content analyzed the following 4 themes. And we found that when accusations were made by the mother against the father, they range from topics like he's done wrong to the family, he's a bad father, to the point that she would ask the children not to call him father. I don't know how it might feel in other contexts, in other cultures, but that's a big deal. Okay, I got your message. That's a big deal in the Taiwanese culture due to the emphasis on, you know, family values and being responsible in the family. And then we also asked them, well, what do you think the triggers were or the reasons were? And they were usually part of the mother's or relatives' abuse of the father. There might have been a custody dispute or a tug of war. As you can see, I've included some quotes here. And our participants said that they felt helpless, shame, self-blame, and fear as a result of being exposed to these accusations or allegations, feeling like, well, we are abusers, but we had to survive because mom had control all over our money. They also described their father's reactions ranging from outbursts to accepting it, to feeling helpless, depressed, and the impact on them. Something that really came up was that they felt they couldn't wish for a healthy relationship in their own lives, a complete and healthy relationship, whether it be an intimate relationship or a romantic relationship. They did try to cope by focusing on, for example, grades. That's something quite significant in a Taiwanese culture, blocking it out, seeing a counseling psychologist. And I do need to emphasize that these feelings and these struggles are even stronger, I think, in a culture like what we have in Taiwan, due to the strong emphasis on, you know, conforming to family values and ties and not shaming your family, not talking about your family problems. So, oh, okay, thank you. Maybe I'll just spend my 3 extra minutes on the conclusions. So based on what we've seen so far, because we've actually just started this study, we're hoping to collect more data, for the next year, is that childhood exposure to possibly false accusations and allegations against fathers, as we've heard in the previous talks, I also do think that they amount to a certain form of psychological abuse or emotional abuse. And I did mention this in the panel that I talked to you about earlier. And the parents were actually quite surprised that I made such a strong conclusion, saying that I feel it's a form of child abuse, because they had never heard a psychologist or a psychology professor saying that in Taiwan. And so it's a huge research gap that needs to be addressed. And as I mentioned, I was really surprised about that people, contacted us about wanting to talk to us about their experiences. People as old as, 50 something, 60 something said, when I was little, I saw a lot of this. I heard my father being, yelled at and being humiliated by my mother and my grandparents. And also, finally, we need to let the courts know, for the reasons I mentioned in the first few slides. So I actually just spent this morning talking to the prosecutors. These are prosecutors working with sexual assault cases. So we have special women's and family, women and children's unit. I know it does sound quite sexist, why not women, men, and children? But I do remind the prosecutors that you must take into account a custody dispute, and you must listen to children more. When they make an allegation against the father, you have to ask more questions, or at least as many questions as you do when allegations are made against mothers. So I'll wrap up my talk. Thank you so much for listening.